does give you a lot of skills, mopping being one of them that I actually got to use. But it's little anecdotal things like that as I write and I like to just share with everybody. You find the humor in the most mundane little tiniest things, and that's what really life is all about. Just sharing the little tiny dark bright spots in the real dark moments.
I found that once you've cleaned latrines that have been run through by like an entire company of infantrymen, then no job after that will ever make you like be upset. There's nothing that you could deal with that will bother you. And people are like, why are you unfazed by this? And it's like, because I've done some disgusting things. So,
have you ever had to dig like the pistols?
Yes. Anyway.
I was in New Bill and there was like one dish that we had that was halfway filled and there was like frogs swimming in it.
I'm sorry I opened this door.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'll never forget, there was like this trench that we dug that we were using for the latrine, and it was like halfway filled. And one day we got in trouble by our platoon sergeant, who was a former drill sergeant. She was a little 4 foot lady named Sergeant First Class Boucher. I'm sorry, I'm telling the story, but she pulled the squad out, and we were right behind this trench, this latrine trench, and she was cursing us out for somebody not doing a thing. And I'll never forget, like, after she got done, like, bringing us a new one, she did an about face, took a step forward, and went right in the...
That's really undercuts an argument,
It was the most grossest thing, and nobody went in to get her, so I went ahead and did it. And the shots I got that day, I still have the scars. But, like stories like that, I'm hesitant to share, openly with.
Although actually, it's a cliche to write what you know, but it's a cliche for a reason. So a lot of times, when you have had those experiences that are so comical but perfect to fit into stories, like there's a reason why you can draw on those. I found like kind of the worst writers are the people that they haven't really had any life experience. They just think they're basically narcissists who think that ideas will just come from them out of the blue, and if they haven't done anything, like they're just a genius. And so whether you're working at like the rail yard, like Matt Weldon, the artist who does Punchline and does Soul Finder, or doing all these, the most interesting writers to me have led these lives with this, especially if you be like blue collared like jobs, and they've had these experiences where they've dealt with people that are crazy and out of a Quentin Tarantino movie. Those tend to be like the best writers to me, the people that have had these weird kind of life experiences.
It helps to put a little crazy in your story from time to time.
I just put the truth, because man, some of the things I've seen in California.
Yeah.
Thank you for the questions.
Who else has a question? Shoot.
So it's not really. You asked me if you had to elaborate, but like when writing a story, what helps you keep pushing forward? You come up with an idea, and sometimes there's like a block, or you don't know how to keep moving forward with the story. What would be your advice to keep pushing with that story?
I got this. This question was built for me. Booze. More and more booze. I get writer's block, hey, break out the jack, let's go.
Ian Fleming's pretty famous for saying whenever a story was dragging, somebody showed up and tried to kill Bond. They get stuff back on track pretty quick. That's shorthand for outside forces affect your character and they have to react in some way. It's also called a complication in screenwriting terms. So, you just, you have to figure out why something's working and why it's not working. And in a lot of cases, it's because people's motivations don't ring true, which means that their actions are stupid or false. So it's just a question of figuring out what everybody wants, what they're willing to do it, how that puts people in conflict, and then you add in, weird environmental factors or whatever else to make your story interesting and, more important, visually interesting if you're making comics.
I mean, it also depends on your personality, but sometimes I've found that like if you're trying to force things, you're just going to make the situation worse. So sometimes it's almost better to just put it in a drawer and go away for a couple days and do something else, and go to the beach or just chill out and don't put so much pressure on yourself, and see if that works. Bill had very good advice. And then this sounds a little weird, but it works for me. But before I go to bed, I basically tell my brain hey, figure this out, work on this. I'm almost like talking to my brain before I fall asleep. And then it's subconsciously, my brain is working on it in the background while I'm sleeping. And then sometimes, like I said, I'll wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning, or I'll 6 o'clock 2 days later, and then it's epiphany. It's that's it, and it just clicks. So I don't know, that's worked for me. I know that sounds weird, but it's happened multiple times where I kind of ordered my brain to work on it while I'm sleeping, and it did.
So I'm smarter first thing in the morning. So one of the things that I do is I try to schedule time to get up and start my routine early. And then while I'm in the shower, I'll think about, okay, if I'm going to write this page today, what does that look like? What's the best version of that page I can help hit the page? So I'll think, take a few minutes and focus on getting a start. The starting's the hardest part. Once you get going, you can usually keep going.
And here's another weird one. I usually will try and create a soundtrack that fits the story that I'm trying to write.
I was about to say that.
Yeah, so I'll basically get a score, and I basically movie scores, and I'll put that on and try and think of a scene that emotionally matches the music that I'm listening to. And for whatever reason, sometimes having the right music while I'm mulling over these things prompts a story idea.
Hidden Citizens, they have a real great cover soundtracks for old songs. I use them sometimes when the blues run out. I have nothing left.
If you plan ahead, it never runs out.
I'm chaotic, so I don't really plan things. It's this sounds like a
Can't imagine you not shopping for that.
7-Eleven's down the street. So.
There you go. Who else has a question?
Oh, going back to the last
Right there.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
You're all writers, so when you're talking to your artists about how you think the panel will go, do you usually mainly use words, or do you try to sketch with stick figures, or how do you get your point across for the artist?
So my artist is Luigi Terrell. He's from the Philippines, and I think I've said this before. His English is not his first or best language, so I have to take a normally detailed script and break it down to a couple sentences. What he and I have managed to work out over the years is if he wants to add a panel, he'll actually do a layout, hey, I condensed this because I thought this would be more dynamic. And I'm okay, that looks cool. Or he'll draw, sometimes he'll draw the character cut out of the panel to do something else. I'm why did you do that? It's well, I thought this was cool. But it all really just comes down to, when I write my scripts, I have this spreadsheet sort of a layout. I'm hey, panel 1, page 1, panel 1, I want to see this. Panel 2, I want to see this, so on and so forth. And then the dialogue I have on a separate side. So there's room for him to cut panels out or actually add to. So we've kind of found what works best for us as a team. And I don't know about you guys, but once you finally get in the groove with your artists and you see what they want and how they react to your scripts, the first script or two is usually the hardest one to get through. But by 3 and 4, it's here, this is what I want to see, and they just bang it out.
Yep. It depends on the environment you're writing in. Sometimes you have to write for an editor that signs off on stuff. Sometimes you're just writing for the artist. In the case I'm on the Punchline Tomorrow Girl book, I'm working with somebody I haven't worked with before. So I am putting in notes. So the scene where Jesse arrives in Manhattan, I think it says, page 1 over panel 1, and after panel 1 in parentheses it says, big panel, little Jesse. So I give him little hints to get his train running, and try to keep people on give them the ability to do their best work. What I try not to do is say, this page has to be that big. I mean, if you read any of Alan I don't think I can write like that, and I'm not sure who can draw like that except maybe Dave Gibbons. So,
No one's also cut out like that.
yeah, so, you know, I don't do middle ground, background, foreground. I don't say exactly what's in there, because I trust the artist to do a good job. I try to, you know, kind of vet them before we start working together. But I try to, you know, if something's big and dramatic, I'll say, you know, big panel, you know. In Matt's case, Matt likes to fill stuff up with images. I try to say from time to time, lots of talking heads, please leave some room. So, you know, I try to write to the strengths of all the different people I work with. So Matt draws weird stuff really well. So in the thing that he's going to be drawing in this Tomorrow Girl Punchline thing, one of the characters is an evolved octopod who wears a butler suit. So he gets to draw an octopus who's basically Alfred the Butler. So that will be interesting. I can't wait to see what Matt does with it.
Why not an octopus?
Well,
It
because
could be an octopus with like 8 claws.
he works for a superhero, so having guns would be redundant.
Fair.
That's it. My boss has laser vision, like that kind of. But, you know, I think we all try to find a way to write to the strengths of the people we're working with, because it's a team sport. It's just that the writer usually gets to carry the ball first, and then everybody else comes along and executes the line art, the color art, and then the letters to try to make it a clear, kind of comprehensive, best version of the project you're trying to do.
I got one other question.
Oh, she had one.
Go ahead. I'll ask you that.
Yes, so I know typically in a comic publishing setup that there's typically an editor. But before it goes to the editor, is there a process where you just bounce it off of somebody you trust and say, you know, hey, this is garbage, you know, you might want to try and do this or something? I know Mr. Douglas also mentioned that he has people who go over his research and checks for accuracy, but is there anything else to that process? I'm not sure if I work for that right.
It's a little different when you work for yourself. I had a buddy that worked in the Batman office at DC for a while. He was an assistant editor, so one of the things that he did was he worked with new talent. So one of the places you start out on those books is like on the kids' books, because I don't want to say nobody cares about those books, but it's not the mainstream Batman books. You know, there's a little wiggle room there. So I pitched 3 ideas for a Justice League Unlimited story, and he hated all 3 of those. So I pitched another 3, and he hated those. And I said, "Are you sure out of the 6 you hate all of them?" He said, "Well, this one I hate the least." I said, "Okay, let me see if I can't fix that then." And I worked with him and got back some notes. My favorite note I've ever gotten is, I think the script describes 2 magic giant rock monsters trying to pull Superman apart like a big chicken. And Superman reacts, and the note I got back was, "Superman does not use sarcasm." Okay. Fine. So I rewrote the line. So, you know, when you're working with other people, you have to kind of accommodate their process and accommodate what they're trying to do. So, you know, if you want to write a little book from a big publisher or a big book from a big publisher, there's a process that they have where you have to have kind of your 6-month vision, like what you're doing mapped out in front of you. When you're making up your own stuff, like Matt came to me the other day and he said, "Mel hadn't been in enough books lately. I want her to go full John Wick on a building full of dudes." Like, I can write that. So, you know, that's the process, either on both on the corporate end, contrasting against the independent.
So I work for myself, so I pretty much hit F7 on the script and let it ride for the most part. As long as there's no spelling mistakes, but you can also catch in lettering. I do my own lettering too. But there are sometimes, outside of like this crossover script with Punchline and correct. I usually write the script about once, and as long as it's not too terrible to me, it just goes. I do have a Patreon too, so when I publish like the Patreon version of stuff, sometimes Princess Elizabeth over there will catch something like, hey, there's a spelling error right here, and I can just go back, make that quick edit before it goes to print, and fix it there. But usually, it's just me. I'm not writing for anyone but me and my target audience. So, outside of just spelling mistakes, it's really the only thing I look for. If the story's if I don't feel like the story is good enough to present, I just won't present it. Again, I've rewritten this crossover story arc 14 times because I'm not just dealing with my characters, I'm dealing with other people's characters, and I got to make sure that everyone has the right amount of screen time, the characters are handled the right way, and I don't want certain things, certain jokes might be outdated by the time it actually gets drawn up. So I need to make sure those things are at least current enough. So outside of that, it's just fire and forget for me.
I had an artist pitch me doing a thing because there's one of the rumors that the Russians started in the Ukrainian war is that the Ukrainians had some sort of mutant super soldiers that were destroying their regular soldiers, therefore they should be destroyed. And the guy I'm working with, we'd been talking about doing an X-Files type book. He's like, that should be an episode. And I said, I'm not sure in the 6 months that it's going to take for us to get this done, that's still going to be relevant. So maybe there's a way we can make that relevant, but we'll see.
It might be relevant by itself,
Yeah.
a year from now maybe. I have a whole second story arc completely dedicated to shooting Justin Bieber in the face. It's one of my things. And someone kind of pitched me, he's like, that's kind of old. Maybe why not Seth Rogen? It's like, I don't really care for Seth Rogen that much. But it's only because Seth Rogen's now the current new guy to hate, but Justin Bieber's eternal. Not immortal. So you can absolutely forever write Justin Bieber jokes.
I can't follow that up, but I will say, for me personally, I found if you think that you're the smartest person in the room, then you probably should leave that room. So I will, with my work, I will go to someone who's smarter than me, and that is my wife, and somebody who is not afraid to give you honest feedback. And so she will read my scripts, and she is relentless, and she will be like, wow, this is really dumb. Why would you do this? Why would you do this, Doug? But then she has constructive criticism, and she'll say you should think of this or that or the other thing. And she's really big into anime and manga, and she'll be like, now, if this were an anime, this is kind of similar to what you see, blah, 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 blah. And she's like, maybe you could tease that out or whatever. So find somebody who you believe is smarter than you, and somebody who will also give you just the honest, blunt truth, but with your best interest in mind.
It always helps we've all got blind spots. It helps if other people can look at yours and point out, things before you step on them.
That's why I hired Dr. Professor Princess Elizabeth.
There you go.
This will be my last question. If you don't mind. I know y'all writing for comic books. Is there a different way to writing, whether writing for a movie or a game? How do y'all face that when y'all either writing for a movie or a game?
So the first, with Demon's Match, that was my first comic script or whatnot. And I kind of grew up, I went to the University of Southern California, I was big, I wanted to be be in the movies and all of that. And I wrote the script and I gave it to Timothy Lim, great artist, and he's like, Doug, this script is really good, but it's a movie script. You basically need to rewrite the entire thing and write it for comic books or whatever. So he's like, I really like it, I like the dialogue and all of this. But so yeah, it was a learning experience too. Then I had to go panel by panel, break it down. Because initially I was like, I'm gonna give him a lot of creative runway to do what he wants. And it was like, okay, well if I think I could tell this page in 5 panels, but you can tell it in 3, like that old game show with the music or whatever, go for it. That's kind of what I do with Matt on some level. like, no, I want you to put panel by panel exactly what you want in every single one. So I had to go through, rewrote everything, sent it to him. He's like, boom, this is how I like it. And then for the second book, I started working with Matt, and Matt, then he was just like, yeah, it's good to go. But Matt, as Bill knows, is so chill. He like, no matter what you turn in, he's gonna be like, yeah, man, it's cool, I'll make it work.
Matt is a national treasure.
But yeah, it's definitely different writing for comics than, say, a screenplay, for sure.
I tried to be like a novelist in my youth, so learning to transition from novel writing to script writing was a huge learning curve for me. Movie scripts often require every scene to be filled with something, and I like writing scenes where nothing happens, it's just the character being just there and emotional. So having to unlearn certain things that you would normally do in novel writing, transition that into script writing, and then again, once I started working with Luigi more, I had to transition to this spreadsheet layout and just pretty much annihilate 90% of my own verbiage there, and just making that work with him. So now I can just have like, okay, character A is just sitting, staring out a window, looking sad, and then he'll just draw the most saddest scene you've ever written. So it's a bit of a learning curve. As you transition from each different writing style, they all have like their own unique challenges and things to them. But I find them all pretty fun.
The comic book script, you just need to communicate enough to the artist that they can draw it, and then you can come along later and write the dialogue and make that work. Novels are a little bit more formatted and structured. Screenplays are probably the most formatted and structured thing in the world, and they are great. If you can find the script for Thor Ragnarok, it's hilarious. The script for the first adventures of Spider-Man, the animated movie, is a great script. And there are people that try to use the standard screenwriting software like Final Draft to write comics. It doesn't quite work because there's no mechanism in there without significant modifications for pages and panels. But with writing for movies, it's such a regimented, unionized process that's assigned, everybody's got their own specific job within it, that it's very weirdly competitive and weirdly structured if you come at it from the world of comics, because kind of everybody's protecting their own little piece of the pie there. So, you know, it's very differently produced, but it still has to have the same things that a good story has in it. You've got to have people wanting things, people having obstacles, people being funny, people being sad, all the things that make, you know, fiction awesome. They're just expressed in a different kind of format. And there's little tricks and things that you have to do and ways that you have to write things there. And it's so persnickety that there's a website called Ask Dr. Format, and you can go and look at the minuscule weird changes that people need to make in their screenplays to make it, you know, conform to the structure for the people reading it, because there's so much money involved that, you know, people have to read these things and actors have to audition. I think the guy who played Reacher had to Zoom audition something like 9 times for 9 different people to get the gig. But you know, the stakes are way different when you're making movies versus making comics.
I have a quick question. What writing software do you guys use?
I just go into my Google Docs and open a blank document and go from there.
Okay, what about you?
You know that free thing that comes with your computer called something like Notepad?
No, I heard of this.
I use that.
Cool. I use Microsoft Word,
I really hate Word, so I don't.
but it has F7. F7 is like the most amazing
It
thing.
does.
Alright, I guess that's our time.
Yeah.
Y'all were a great audience. Thank you for coming.
We'll learn something like the value of alcohol in the writing process.
And if you have any other questions about writing that we didn't answer, or you just didn't want to ask in front of everybody, just go to that kind of comics booth and stop by. All of us like.
That's
talking
where
to
we're
you guys.
at for the next couple of days.
I will be drunk.